Lesson 37. The secession of the 10 tribes. And we want to be turning our Bibles to 1 Kings chapter 12. In your sheet too, an question I want to point out. The tribes are going to split. That's a sad thing. That would be like a family splitting up. These brothers go this way, and these brothers go that way, or sisters split because of a disagreement. And that's what we have here. But this disagreement didn't all of a sudden start here with the son of Solomon, Rehoboam. That's sometimes what we like to focus on, and we put a lot of the blame with him, and he did. He played a major part in that blame, the biggest part. But we can recognize already during the time of the life of David and Saul. When Saul died, some of the tribes said, we want the king from our tribe so that we are important. Jealousy began to come up. And when David's sons, in a couple of different instances, when they tried to make themselves kings, also taking with them 10 tribes, this began to well up. After the death of Saul, remember the one guy was, Abner made him king. Ishbosheth was made the new king of the 10 tribes for a short period before David. So this is not the first instance we have to recognize. Seeds had been planted, troubles had crept up before, but this is kind of, as we sometimes say, the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the final piece of the puzzle that finally made it so that the 10 tribes. Now, it was under God's direction, because God had told David for his sins this would happen. And God is going to, in his counsel, make what he decrees come to pass. Right? But it was through Solomon's sins, it was through the sins of others, all throughout history, that we finally reach this point. Okay? Alright. 1 Kings chapter 12. Let's take a look at some of the verses here. And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass, when Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, we'll stop there. Who did the right of selecting the next king fall to? We might say, well, it fell to the tribes. But that wasn't true. The duty, the honor of selecting the next king fell to God. Only God could determine who would be the next king. He had already determined it by the line of generations, because that's how Christ would be born. Rehoboam was the proper and right king to be upon the throne. Now we know many of the kings of the future will be wicked. It doesn't mean that they're the best king. It doesn't mean that they're even a godly king. But the fact of the matter is, it is God's decree that a son of David will sit upon the throne. But that's not what happens here. We read that, and we get some information from other parts of the Bible too, that the tribe of Ephraim kind of led the other 9 tribes. So Ephraim and those 9 tribes make you 10. They didn't want a man from David's line to sit on the throne. The tribe of Judah had their opportunity in their minds. The tribe of Judah had their chance to have their man sitting on the throne. Now it should be another tribe's turn. Another tribe should have an important person on the throne. Okay? So they refused to even go to Jerusalem, we see here, because they had to meet at Shechem. So these men were pretty stubborn. Right? place in Ephraim they had to go. And not only that, but they didn't just gather there, but they also called Jeroboam back out of Egypt. Hey, Solomon is dead. And Solomon had been trying to kill Jeroboam, and that's why Jeroboam had to flee to Egypt. Now that Solomon is dead, let us send some messengers down to Egypt to tell Jeroboam so that he will return. Maybe we can make him our next king. Okay? What does this tell us about Rehoboam? Well, he was probably a pretty weak king. Wasn't one who had great leadership qualities that people looked up to and said, now what does the king say? But they probably knew that Rehoboam was a highly influential person. Rehoboam depended quite heavily on the men around him for some guidance. So let's continue reading here. At the end of verse 3, Jeroboam represents the people of Israel, and he comes to Rehoboam to speak to him. And what does he ask for? That's verse 4. The father made our yoke grievous, or thy father, meaning Solomon. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. And he said unto them, Depart yet for 3 days, then come again unto me. And the people departed. And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father whilst he yet lived, and said, How do ye advise that I may answer this people? And they spake unto him, so these are the wise men, saying, If thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and will serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, that they will be thy servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men, which had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up before him, which stood before him. And he said unto them, What counsel give ye, that we may answer this people who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke which thy father did put upon us lighter. And the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto the people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thou shalt say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. And now whereas my father did lade you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father has chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day, as the king had appointed, saying, Come to me again the 3rd day. And the king answered the people roughly, and forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, I will chastise you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from the Lord, that he might perform his saying, which the Lord spake by Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. So, what do we learn here a little bit about the time and life of the people during Solomon? Although it was a time of peace, there wasn't war and they weren't losing loved ones, it must have been a time of great labor. They had to build the temple. They had to build everything around there. Remember, 10,000 of them would be gone for a month at a time, 3 or 4 times a year. Their work was very heavy. It was a work that required a lot of time and effort. But it was good, godly work. It was also work that made them wealthy. God blessed them in that work. But now the people come here and they ask, Rehoboam, please give us a lighter yoke. Please reduce some of the taxes, because Solomon, of course, had to pay for. Remember we talked about that one day, all of the things in Solomon's kingdom that he had to feed and take care of. Well, he needed a lot of money to do that, so he also, in addition to having the people work hard, he heavily taxed them. And so the people asked for a reduction in taxes too. So Rehoboam wasn't ready to give an answer. He did a good thing. He didn't just give an answer off the cuff, but he said, give me 3 days to think about it. And he went to some wise men. He went to the old wise men who were advisors to his father, who had lived a long life. And he also had some wise men, some advisors that were young men his age, who had probably just come into power along with him. Well, he goes to the old wise men first. What should I do? And they should listen to the people. Make their yokes a little bit lighter. Reduce their taxes. They've had a difficult time. And then he turns and he goes to his young advisors. And he asks them, what should I do? And they go, make it heavier. More taxes. Your father had grand plans and grand places. Let's make the taxes even heavier and make them work even harder and make you even wealthier than your father Rehoboam. And they're probably also thinking about themselves, well, it would make me very wealthy too, so that'll be an added benefit. So those are the two bits and pieces of information. Well, Rehoboam should listen to these wise old men. That's an example for us. Who should we listen to in our life? Is it maybe a wise idea to go seek out the advice of our brother or sister who's a year older? Well, maybe if it's related to them, but if it's big time advice that we're looking for. What should I do with my life here? What decision should I make? I'm 19 years old and I want to start a company. Well, of course, all your friends will say, yeah, go for it and do it. But maybe there's wisdom in talking to Grandpa who did it at one point in his life. Or who knows, maybe there's wisdom in talking to Grandma who had some brothers who did it, or Mom and Dad. Seek out the advice of those who are older than us is good, sound advice. But Rehoboam didn't listen here. He listened to the young men, and he himself became as though he were a tyrant. He would crack the whip even harder. My father whipped you with this, I'll whip you with something that stings even more. I'm going to put even more work upon you. I'm going to raise those taxes. Well, we see there in verse 15, God works out the division of the kingdom through this decision. Rehoboam had made a foolish decision, and the Lord used that to cause the split in the kingdom. Okay? So, what's the people's reaction? Verse 16. So when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, what portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. But as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. So we'll stop there. What does that mean? That we want no portion of the house of David or the sons of Jesse? That's a very scary statement. What the people of the 10 tribes of Judah are saying is, we don't want part of that line of Christ. We can earn our own salvation. We can do it our own way. We don't want to do it the Lord's way. We think we know better. So we're willing to risk our spiritual lives. We're willing to risk the future of our children and grandchildren. And we're going to think that we can be so smart, we're going to do it our own way. Even Solomon, the wisest man in the world, didn't make that type of decision to go and do things his own way. When he did, he saw the fruit of it. The kingdom was torn from him. But he had wisdom, though, that he must follow God's ways. And so that's what these people should have done, but they rejected that. They felt there was no inheritance in being part of the line of David, and really what they're saying is we don't want Christ. We don't need his salvation. Okay? Except for the people of Judah. They kept Rehoboam as their king, and that is how God is going to preserve the line of David so that Christ can be born through the royal line. So Rehoboam sends a tax collector, this Adoram, through the land of Israel. Verse 18, then Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the tribute, meaning he was a tax collector, and all Israel stoned him with stones that he died. Okay? They were not going to have anything to do with Rehoboam. It didn't matter what Rehoboam tried to make them do or force them to do. These people were not going to listen to him. Okay? So then Rehoboam thought, well, fine. If they aren't going to do it that way, then maybe I will force them. Okay? And he went and he got an army together. Verse 21, and when Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin, and 180,000 chosen men, so 108,000, which were warriors to fight against the house of Israel, to bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam. So let me get my warriors together. We'll go teach these guys a lesson. They think they can leave us? Well, let's get our army together. Let's go march north up to Israel and let's teach them a lesson. The Lord will certainly be on our side. We might not have the numbers, but the Lord is on our side. But that wasn't true. Verse 22, but the word of God came unto Shimei, the man of God, saying, speak unto Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and unto all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the remnant of the people, saying, thus saith the Lord, ye shall not go up, nor fight against your brethren, the children of Israel. Return every man to his house. God steps in. He says, no. We are not going to have brothers fighting against brothers. We are not going to have a civil war. Not going to happen. So the men, these 108,000 men who were ready for war, went back to their homes. Okay? God had some of his people in Israel. There were still godly people living in that part of the land. And eventually, after a long time, the Lord will eventually draw them out and bring them to join with the people of Judah before he eventually wipes them out by sending them away into a permanent captivity. God will deal with it, not Rehoboam. Okay? At the end of, or what then was Rehoboam's rule like? So he is now king, but he's only king over Judah, not Israel. So what was his rule like? It was a very different rule than his father's rule. Okay? Rehoboam initially was good. He walked in the ways of the Lord. In the northern areas of Judah, where their border would be touching with the other tribes of Israel, he built up some defensed cities in case there was ever an invasion. Okay? He worshipped the Lord properly, as he should during those first few years. He stocked the cities of the north with weapons, because they want to be ready for battle. He stocked them with food in case there was a long siege. So, he was a wise man. But he also then began to fall into the same sins of his father. He was a king and he thought, well, I don't just want one wife. I shall have many wives. And so Rehoboam, his father, had many wives. We read of 18 wives and 16 concubines. Okay? One of them, obviously, one of those wives would have a son that would succeed, that would be part of the royal line of David that Christ would eventually be born from. Okay? But Judah has in it these other idols. Remember, Solomon had given permission to his wife to set up, not idols, altars. Other altars. And so the people begin to fall more and further into sin. Okay? They begin to sacrifice to the idols of the heathen. They continue. They copy Solomon rather than Rehoboam. Okay? So the idols began to multiply. They began to grow. And we see that God sent the king of Egypt to come punish the people there. And this prophet, Shimei, the one who had told him not to go into battle, he also has to come back to Rehoboam another time and tell him, you, the people of Israel, have forsaken me. Okay? So, towards the end of his life, Rehoboam is not that good godly leader anymore, but he begins to live in sin. So the Lord has to punish them. Okay? And the princes of Judah had to humble themselves, not just Rehoboam, but the other men. God delivered them from their enemies, these people of Egypt who had come and taken them. Okay? But a sad thing that happens, the wealth and the beauty and the riches of the kingdom of Solomon begin to diminish. That king of Egypt, Shishak, he goes into some of those, the house to the forest of Lebanon, those gold shields, the weapons, he begins to take some. And other nations, as they go along, will slowly do it. So that slowly, that we can say the pinnacle of the wealth and the peace and the riches and the beauty of all Israel, when they are united together, was at its peak during the time of Solomon, and it begins to dwindle more and more, so that some of the riches, the house with the golden shields, they were stolen. Rehoboam rules for 17 years. Eventually he dies. He dies a wicked king. A king who's not leading the people to honor God. And the nation is not honoring God. And so Rehoboam dies. He's not put to death. He's not murdered. But he dies in his wickedness. And there are many who say confidently, based on the actions of his heart, He's not one that we can be sure that went to heaven to see God. He was a wicked and foolish man. So, what was it about the 10 tribes that made them leave that maybe is a good lesson for us that I want to point out? It's the fact that they weren't thankful for the blessings God had given them. During the time of Solomon, yes, the work was hard. Yes, the taxes were great, but did they ever come up short? No. They always had plenty. The problem was, they weren't thankful for those things. They just saw the amount of work, and they saw the amount of taxes, and they wanted more time for themselves, and they wanted more money for themselves. And that's why they had made that request of Rehoboam. Now, he would have been wise to have granted it to him, because it was a great amount. But yet, God didn't give them too much. He didn't give them too much work to do. God didn't give them too much wealth. He gave them the right exact amount that they needed. And so, in their unthankfulness, by desiring to have less and less and less, or more money and less work, they failed to look at the things that God had given them to be thankful. And that's a good reminder for us. We talked about that in the Thanksgiving season, and even past the Thanksgiving season. We cannot forget that. You have thousands of things all around you every day. Everything your eyeball can see is something we ought to be thankful for. Even the difficult, bad things that happen in our lives. So you were punished for something last night. View it with thankfulness. I'm thankful that God used my parents to punish me so that I don't fall into that sin again. We need to be thankful for everything that God gives us. And that's what the Israelites, the 10 tribes, forgot to do. And that's why, although they may have been happy, rubbing their hands together when Jeroboam took them away and got them out from under the rule of Rehoboam, they lost a lot. It wasn't just leaving behind Judah, it was leaving behind the worship of God. And so that's an important reminder for you and me.